October 31st. The air crackled with a chill, and inside a suburban house, music thumped and lights flashed over a sea of masked faces. Alex, just another guest, donned the plain white mask handed out at the door, expressionless, cool, anonymous. The mask made him bold, a mystery in the crowd, lost in the revelry. As midnight passed and the party faded, Alex stepped into the night, reaching to remove his mask. It wouldn't budge. Fused to his skin, a simple party favor now a permanent prison. The night of fantasy had become a nightmare. Sunlight revealed the horror. Alex's mask was still there, blank and unyielding. He clawed, scrubbed, pried, but it wouldn't move. It was as if it had become his face. Panic turned to dread as he stared at his reflection, his eyes trapped behind a featureless shell. No seam, no edge, no escape. Alone and desperate, he realized this was no ordinary mask. Something was terribly, impossibly wrong. Forced to face the world, Alex hid behind a hoodie and sunglasses, but the mask was impossible to conceal. At the coffee shop, Chloe the barista recoiled, her smile vanishing, her eyes filled with fear. On the street, strangers stiffened, mothers pulled children close, and conversations died as he passed. The mask wasn't just odd. It was a warning, a symbol of something sinister. Alex felt invisible and exposed all at once, haunted by the way people looked through him. The world saw not Alex, but a face they feared. Days blurred together, Alex's apartment became a cell. The mask felt natural now, his reflection a constant shock. His eyes haunted behind the calm facade. Sleep brought nightmares of endless masks and silent crowds. Online searches yielded nothing. No one else suffered this fate. The mask wasn't just hiding him, it was erasing him. Alex was vanishing piece by piece. Hunger forced Alex out at night, but the world recoiled from him. In the store, employees and customers stared, their fear unmistakable. The cashier flinched at his touch, avoiding his gaze. It wasn't Alex they feared. It was the mask, as if they recognized it. Who did they think he was? The mask had a history, and Alex was trapped inside it. The encounters became a terrifying pattern. Everywhere the reaction was the same. It wasn't just curiosity, it was colder, more personal. People saw a specific person. In the grocery store he overheard, "Looks just like him. Don't stare, it's creepy." Another time, "Someone should call the police." What had this doppelganger done? This was becoming something far more dangerous. The world was a minefield of accusing eyes and fearful whispers. He began to piece together a terrifying puzzle. A face associated with something terrible. The mask wasn't just a mask, it was a symbol of a local pariah. The name came to him on a Tuesday. He went to the public library. He overheard librarians whispering his name. "It's him, it's Daniel." He rushed home, the name echoing in his mind. He typed the name into the search bar. The screen filled with news articles. Local man Daniel Rosser disappears after questioning. Police name Daniel Rosser, person of interest. It was his face. A grainy security camera still showed a man in a dark coat wearing a mask. The same mask that was currently fused to Alex's face. They didn't think he was Alex. They thought he was Daniel Rosser, a man on the run. He was trapped behind the face of their town's bogeyman. The disappearance of Emily Carter had cast a long, dark shadow over the town. Emily was a local girl, beloved by everyone. One night she was laughing with friends, the next morning she was gone. Flyers went up, but weeks turned into months. Then, the police released a grainy image, Emily walking, followed by a tall man in a dark coat. His face was hidden by a blank white mask. That masked figure became the town's bogeyman. The police identified him as Daniel Rosser, a recluse. When they went to question him, he was gone, vanished just as completely as Emily. He was the monster in the mask. Now, Alex was wearing that monster's face. He was walking through a town that was a tinderbox, and the mask on his face was the lit match. The knock on the door was sharp. 3 loud raps echoed through Alex's silent apartment. He peered through the peephole. On his doorstep stood 2 men in dark suits. Detectives. They had found him. "Police, open up!" He pulled the door open a few inches, the security chain still fastened. Their gazes were fixed on the white mask. They didn't look surprised. "Daniel Rosser?" "No," Alex managed to say, his voice a whisper behind the mask. "My name is Alex. Sir, we need you to come with us. We have a few questions we'd like to ask you down at the station. It's about the disappearance of Emily Carter." The shadow had finally caught up to him. He was a suspect. The walk to the police car was the longest of Alex's life. Neighbors watched from their windows. They saw him, Daniel Rosser, being led away by police. Alex kept his head down, but there was no hiding the mask. Inside the police car, the silence was thick. He stared out the window as his neighborhood rolled by, tainted by his new reality. He was not a person to them, he was a piece of evidence. At the station he was led through gray corridors. He was escorted into an interrogation room with a metal table and 3 chairs. He was alone with the 2 detectives. The older detective slid a photograph across the table, the security camera image. "Recognize this?" Miller asked. Alex stared at the photo of the man in the white mask. He was speechless. "My name is Alex Mercer," he repeated. "I work at an accounting firm downtown. I live at the address you found me. This mask, it's from a Halloween party. It won't come off." He knew how it sounded. Insane. He watched the detectives' faces for any sign that they believed him. He found none. "Daniel," Miller began, ignoring Alex's plea, "we know you came back. You've been making people nervous, Daniel." Each time he said it, it was like a physical weight. He was pleading for them to see the truth, but every detail only seemed to dig his hole deeper. "Where have you been for the past 3 months, Mr. Rosser?" "I've been here," Alex said. "I'm not Daniel Rosser." Miller slid another photo across the table. It was a driver's license. Underneath the photo was the name Daniel Rosser. "This is you, isn't it? This is the man everyone in town is afraid of." He felt a dizzying sense of vertigo. The questions kept coming. They circled back on his story looking for inconsistencies. They wanted to know about Emily Carter. Did he know her? Had he ever met her? Detective Harris played the bad cop, his voice rising with accusation. "A young woman is missing and you're talking about Halloween masks?" He slammed his hand on the table. "People saw you following her. This mask isn't a costume, it's what you wore when you took her." They weren't just questioning him, they were accusing him. Miller, the older detective, would then play the good cop. "We can help you, just tell us what happened." It was a classic interrogation tactic designed to wear him down. But Alex had no truth to tell other than the one they refused to believe. The line between Alex and Daniel was becoming blurry. The white mask stared back. For a terrifying moment he asked himself, what if they were right? Alex gave them the party hosts' names, Mark and Sarah, and colleagues who could vouch for him. He imagined the verification that would clear his name. Detective Miller re-entered, his face unreadable. "We spoke to Mark and Sarah," he said. "They remember the party, but they don't remember you, Alex." Alex's mind reeled. His co-workers told the same story. The detective leaned forward. "Let's stop with the stories and talk about where you really were that night." Alex was speechless. His alibi had crumbled. The trap had closed. The interrogation changed its rhythm. The methodical questioning gave way to a more aggressive, psychological assault. Detective Harris returned, and, his energy filled the small room with this palpable tension. They began to fire questions at him in rapid succession, not always waiting for an answer. It was a tactic designed to confuse and overwhelm, to break down his defenses until the truth, their version of the truth, was the only thing left. "Where did you hide the body? Why did you pick her? Did she scream?" The questions were hammer blows, each one chipping away at his sanity, blurring the line between what was real and what they wanted him to believe was real. They painted a vivid, horrifying picture of Emily Carter's last moments, and they placed him right at the center of it. They spoke of the fear in her eyes, the coldness of the night, the secluded spot where he had taken her. They described these scenes with such certainty, such graphic detail, that Alex could almost see them himself. He felt a sickening wave of vertigo as their narrative began to infect his own mind. He knew he wasn't there. He knew he hadn't done those things. But in the suffocating confines of that room, with the weight of their conviction pressing down on him, his own memories began to feel thin and unreliable. Their fiction was more powerful than his reality. The pressure was immense, a physical force. The air was thick and hot. His throat was dry. His head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache. Every time he tried to assert his own identity, to say, "I am Alex Mercer," they would counter with an accusation. "That's what a killer would say, Daniel. You're trying to hide behind a new name." They twisted his every denial into a confirmation of his guilt. His panic was the behavior of a cornered animal. His confusion was a sign of a fractured, guilty conscience. He was in a logical labyrinth with no exit, where every path he took led back to the same conclusion. He was Daniel Rosser. He started to feel a strange sense of detachment, as if he were floating above his own body, watching a scene from a movie. He saw a man in a white mask, hunched over a metal table, being yelled at by 2 detectives. The man looked terrified and alone. He felt a flicker of pity for this man, before realizing with a jolt that the man was him. The pressure was not just an interrogation tactic, it was a form of psychological torture. It was designed to make him question not just his innocence, but his own identity, his own sanity, and it was working. He was breaking. The name Daniel became a weapon. They used it relentlessly, embedding it in every question, every statement. Daniel, just tell us where she is. We know you're not a monster, Daniel. Help us, Daniel. Help us find her. Each time they said it, it was like a drop of water on a stone, slowly eroding his sense of self. He would close his eyes, trying to picture his own apartment, his desk at work, anything that belonged to Alex Mercer. But the images were becoming hazy, pushed aside by the vivid, horrific pictures the detectives were painting. The name they called him was starting to feel more real than the name he called himself. He began to feel a creeping paranoia. What if they were right? It was an insane thought, but it flickered at the edges of his exhausted mind. What if he had some kind of split personality? What if Alex Mercer was a personality created by Daniel Rosser to hide from his own crimes? He thought back to the night of the party. The details were hazy, fragmented by alcohol and the passage of time. Could there be gaps in his memory? Could he have left the party, done something terrible, and then returned, his mind protecting him from the trauma by erasing the event? The seed of doubt, planted by the detectives, was beginning to sprout in the fertile ground of his fear and exhaustion. This internal conflict was a new form of torture. He was at war with himself. One part of his brain screamed that he was innocent, that he was Alex, that this was all a monstrous mistake. But another, smaller voice, a voice that sounded suspiciously like Detective Miller's, whispered doubts. You wore the mask. You were seen. Your friends don't remember you. The evidence, as they presented it, was stacked against him. His own life, his own memories, were the only things on his side, and they were starting to feel like a flimsy defense against an avalanche of accusation. Paranoia took hold, making him question everything he thought he knew. He looked at the detectives, at their confident, knowing expressions. They saw a guilty man, they were so sure. Was it possible for so many people to be wrong? The whole town, the police, even his own friends according to them. It was him against the world. The isolation was absolute. He felt the foundations of his identity cracking under the strain. If everyone in the world tells you that you are someone else, at what point do you start to believe them? The mask on his face was no longer just a physical prison. It was becoming a psychological one, locking him into a personality, a history that was not his own. Alex became acutely aware of the one-way mirror on the wall. He had noticed it when he first came in, a dark, reflective panel that broke the monotony of the beige walls. He knew there were people on the other side. He could feel their presence. An unseen audience watching this drama unfold. Were they other officers? Legal experts? Was Emily Carter's family there, watching the man they believed had destroyed their lives? The thought sent a fresh wave of horror through him. He was on display. His terror and confusion a spectacle for anonymous eyes. Every flinch, every stammer was being observed and judged. This awareness changed his behavior. He became self-conscious, hyper-aware of his own body language. He tried to sit still, to project an aura of calm he did not feel. But it was impossible. The mask on his face, the symbol of his supposed guilt, made any attempt at looking innocent futile. He imagined the people behind the glass, their faces pressed close, their whispers analyzing his every move. Look at him, he can't even sit still. He's lying, you can see it. That's the monster who took our daughter. He was performing for an audience that had already decided he was the villain, and every action he took was interpreted through that lens. The pressure from the unseen observers was different from the direct pressure of the detectives. It was a silent, constant weight. It was the pressure of societal judgment concentrated and focused into a single dark pane of glass. He felt the eyes of the entire town on him. The woman in the coffee shop, the man in the grocery store, the neighbors peering through their curtains. It was as if they were all crammed into that dark room, their collective fear and hatred boring into him. The interrogation room had become a stage, and he was the unwilling star in a true crime drama, playing the part of the killer. He found himself directing his pleas not just to Miller and Harris, but to the mirror itself. He looked at his own reflection, at the blank white mask, and spoke to the people he imagined were behind it. "I didn't do it," he would whisper when the detectives were momentarily silent. "Please, you have to believe me, this is a mistake." But he was talking to a wall. His only response was the sight of his own impassive, masked face, a face that offered no comfort, no hint of the innocent man trapped behind it. The unseen audience remained silent, their judgment hanging heavy and unspoken in the air. Hours bled together into an indistinguishable gray fog of fear and fatigue. Alex had no idea if it was day or night. The windowless room was a sensory deprivation chamber, designed to unmoor him from time and reality. He was running on pure adrenaline, but his reserves were nearly gone. His thoughts became sluggish, his answers more disjointed. The detectives seemed to have limitless energy, their attacks coming from new angles, their confidence unwavering. They brought up old, unrelated facts about Daniel Rosser's life, a speeding ticket, a complaint from a neighbor years ago, painting a portrait of a man with a history of deviance. It was then that Alex saw it, a crack, not in his story, but in theirs. Detective Harris, in his haste to build the narrative, made a mistake. "We know you bought the mask online, Daniel. We have the credit card records." Alex's mind, though foggy, latched onto the statement. A jolt of clarity shot through him. He remembered the party distinctly. He remembered the host, Mark, standing by the door with a large cardboard box, handing the masks out to guests as they arrived. They were cheap party favors, not something bought online, not something Daniel Rosser would have ordered. It was a small detail, but it was a piece of his reality that they had gotten wrong. Hope, which he thought had been extinguished, sparked back to life. It was a tiny ember, but it was enough. "No," Alex said, his voice clearer than it had been in hours. "You're wrong. It was a party favor, from a box. At the party Mark and Sarah threw." He looked directly at Harris, then at Miller. "Your story is wrong." For the first time he saw a flicker of uncertainty in Detective Harris's eyes. It was almost imperceptible, a slight hesitation before he launched into his next question, but it was there. Alex had found a crack in the mirror of their perfect narrative. It wasn't just his word against theirs anymore. They had made a provable error. This tiny victory gave him a surge of strength. He wasn't Daniel Rosser fabricating a lie, he was Alex Mercer, a man who knew the truth because he had lived it. The details mattered, the box of masks mattered, he clung to that fact. The fog in his mind began to recede, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. He was still trapped, he was still a suspect, but he was no longer a passive victim in their story. He was a man with a truth to defend. He looked back at his reflection in the one-way mirror. The mask was still there, blank and white, but for the first time he felt like the man behind it was starting to fight back. The interrogation continued, but its nature had subtly shifted. Alex's small victory, his correction about the mask's origin, had not freed him. Instead, it seemed to make the detectives more resolute, more determined to break him. They dismissed his point as an irrelevant detail, a desperate grasp at a technicality by a guilty man. They doubled down on their narrative, repeating their version of events with even greater conviction. The room, which had been a pressure cooker, now became an echo chamber. The only story allowed was the one they had written, and they recited it over and over, determined to make him believe it. Their voices were a constant droning presence, weaving a reality he was forced to inhabit. They left him alone for long stretches now. It was a new tactic. The silence was in some ways worse than the shouting. In the quiet, their words echoed in his head. Daniel, Daniel, Daniel. The name bounced off the beige walls and settled into the folds of his exhausted mind. He would sit at the metal table staring at his own masked reflection in its polished surface, and the detectives' voices would play on a loop. "We know you did it. Tell us where she is. You wore the mask." The isolation was profound, designed to make him feel completely abandoned by the world, by truth, by his own identity. He was alone with the monster they had created. He tried to fight back in his own mind. He would list facts about his life, the real life of Alex Mercer, his mother's birthday, the name of his first pet, his college major. He recited these facts like a mantra, a prayer to a self that was slipping away. But the echo chamber was powerful. For every fact he remembered about Alex, the detectives had supplied a dozen facts about Daniel. They had spoken of Daniel's childhood, his reclusive habits, his supposed dark thoughts. Their fiction was detailed, robust, and relentless. His own memories, by contrast, felt flimsy and distant, like something he had read in a book long ago. The line between their words and his own thoughts began to dissolve. He would find himself thinking from Daniel's perspective, trying to understand the motivations of the man they insisted he was. Why would he wear a mask? Why would he return to the town? The exercise was a form of self-preservation, an attempt to make sense of the senseless situation. But it was also a terrifying concession. By trying to understand the character of Daniel Rosser, he was inadvertently accepting the role. He was stepping into the monster's shoes, and with each passing hour in the echo chamber, they felt a little less foreign, a little more like his own. They brought him coffee. Detective Miller placed it on the table. Alex looked up at the one-way mirror, knowing he was being watched. He lifted the cup, his hand shaking, and the liquid ran down the mask, splashing onto the table. It was a pathetic moment. He was failing because of the face he was forced to wear. The mask wasn't just a disguise, it was him, a part of his pathology. He felt a surge of rage at the mask itself, this object that had stolen his life. He clawed at his face, his fingernails scraping uselessly. He looked again at the one-way mirror. His reflection was a portrait of madness. He saw what they saw, a monster, a freak, Daniel Rosser. His sanity felt like a thread stretched to its breaking point. Who was he anymore? The only face that felt real was the blank white, terrifying mask of Daniel Rosser. It had become the face in the glass. Detective Miller changed his approach, his voice low. He told a parable about a man lost in the woods who stumbles upon a cave. Inside, he finds the remains of a bear and wears its pelt to survive. But when he returns to his village, the people see a bear, not a man, and chase him away. Alex listened, captivated. He was the man, the mask, his bearskin. The story was a trap, forcing him into a narrative of guilt and isolation. Sometimes, Miller said, the man forgets he's a man and starts to think he really is the bear. Do you ever feel like you've forgotten who you were before? The parable had a profound effect. The world saw him as a monster. Maybe he wasn't going crazy, maybe he was just becoming the bear. The interrogation blurred. Alex was adrift, the detective's voices a distant drone. He retreated deep inside himself. The damage was done. Doubt had taken root, choking his identity. He was no longer sure who he was. Alex Mercer felt like a costume. Daniel echoed in the silence. He began to dissociate, his own hands seeming foreign. Was he Alex pretending to be Daniel? Or Daniel pretending to be Alex? The mirror of his identity had cracked. The detective softened, guiding him. They offered paper and pen. "Write it down," Miller said. "For your peace of mind, for Emily's family, just tell the truth." Alex stared at the blank sheet. What was the truth anymore? He picked up the pen. What if he did it? The line between himself and the accused had been erased. He touched the pen to the paper. Just as the pen touched the paper, the interrogation room door burst open. A uniformed officer rushed to Miller and Harris with a tablet. A live news feed showed a reporter in front of Mark and Sarah's house. The headline, "Police Uncover Grim Discovery in Suburban Home." An anonymous tip led police to dig up the garden. They found the remains of the real Daniel Rosser. Mark, the party host, had killed Rosser and framed Alex. The security footage of the man following Emily Carter, it was Mark in a mask. Emily had been found alive. She had run away from an abusive family. Alex, an innocent man, had been psychologically tortured. They had been interrogating the wrong man. The interrogation room fell silent. The detectives couldn't look at Alex. Their certainty had been obliterated. Alex was not Daniel Rosser. He was a victim. He was released without apology, walking into the night. He was free, but the damage was done. How could he go back? He had been convicted in the court of public opinion. He walked home, passing places now poisoned by his ordeal. He stood before the mirror. The mask was still there. Even with the real killer caught, Alex was left with a permanent reminder. The doctors couldn't remove it. It had become a part of him. Alex was left to navigate the world, forever wearing the face of guilt. A ghost trapped behind the mask that wouldn't come off.